If quantum shifting is real, and I believe that it is, what is the probability that we have different versions of our friends and family? Hear me out. When I have done some heavy quantum shifting, I have observed being almost like inserted into a parallel world where there was slightly different versions of my friends, of my neighbors, of my family. And what was remarkable is that sometimes they didn't always recognize me, but those were pretty big jumps. Oftentimes they did if it was my friends and my family, but it was like the outcomes and the conversations of our lives were slightly different. I have heard of other stories where there was a woman who was engaged and she ported into another parallel world, and she woke up in a different version of her home and had a different version of her fiance and kind of like freaked out. We take that as possible, right? And we take that as real. What is the probability that when you're dating somebody, falling in love with them, having a relationship with them, being married to them, that you actually get a different version of them? I was single at that time, so I didn't have any experience with a romantic partner. But fast forward a couple of years, I was still a quantum shifter, but I was doing more micro shifts. And I remember 2 instances where I thought maybe I was receiving an indication that I was about to split paths and that I had an option of being with one version of a partner versus another. And in both times, the partners looked at me and said, no, don't manifest this. Almost as though they had this awareness and this consciousness that was coming in and was giving me like a turnaround signal, like don't go here because this way is pain. And I was locked in to a past pattern that I was projecting onto the future. Or in my perspective, I was actually reading the present moment and connecting the dots of the predictability of the pattern that I was observing being related to a pattern that I was familiar with in my past. It was early enough into the relationship to where I was still getting to know them and I was still evaluating their behavior and their circumstances, and their face was so uncanny because it was 2 different relationships, 2 different encounters, and they both said, no, don't manifest this. But I did, and I felt that I actually had unfinished business in wrapping up these past patterns, that I had something inside of me that I needed to respond differently. Like I needed to go through a similar type of relationship experience that I had in the past so I could actually show myself my change and my transformation, and I could handle things differently versus the way that I had done it before. And I did that, and I did that successfully. But I do wonder if there was another timeline where there was a different outcome entirely. What are your thoughts? Do you have any experience with this?